Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Shakespeare's Coriolanus, which is one of his big tragedies that often gets either ignored or forgotten about. Okay, so everybody knows about Hamlet and Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. Those are talked about all the time. We also have his Roman plays like Antony and Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Well, Coriolanus is a Roman play, and it is a tragedy. But a lot of times people put it to the side because it's hard to know what to do with exactly. The main character, Coriolanus, or Caius Marcius as he's known at the beginning of the play, is complicated because it's difficult to see a moment of realization in him, a moment of growth. There are very few, and very few significant soliloquies within this story. Everyone recognizes the power of the soliloquies in a lot of Shakespeare's other tragedies. Those moments when we get to look inside of the main character and see the way they are developing and struggling. Coriolanus doesn't really show us his inner struggles, at least not very clearly. And even the climax, where he makes an incredibly significant change of heart, is done without a clear reason why. He's making a huge sacrifice of himself in this moment for his mother. But even then we don't get to see into his heart and see why he's making the choice he is. And in that way it's a very challenging play. But I still find Coriolanus particularly fascinating because of the politics. One of the reasons I've always loved Shakespeare is because of how well he reflects life back to us. We see our human condition, we see the world that we live in, even though these stories were written a long time ago. And Coriolanus, though it's set in ancient Rome and written by Shakespeare in the early 1600s, is still incredibly relevant to our world. Coriolanus is a character with clear faults, but he's also got clear desires and ambitions. And he's caught up in a very complex political underbelly of Rome. And this play opens up a lot of questions, including questions such as, what does it mean to be a good leader? Obviously a very broad question, but we get into the relationship with the state, as well as the population of the state. Do you have to like the people to do what's in the best interest of the state? Coriolanus clearly doesn't like the people, and yet a lot of his actions actually support and provide security and stability for Rome. Are the other senators and leaders doing what's in the best interest of the state and the people? Are the best interests of the state the same as the best interests of the people? Pretty quickly we establish these tribunes who are spokesmen for the people. They are the voice of the people, and yet very clearly they are manipulating the people's voice for their own personal interests. We have a clear tension between the idea of a republic and the idea of a democracy in this story. And the voices that seem to be on the side of democracy just as frequently manipulate the voices of the people for their own personal interests, rather than for the people's good, leading to a scene of chaos towards the end of the play. But the voices for republic are very aloof and don't seem to have any compassion for the people in their hunger, and in their confusion, and in their fear. So whose approach to leadership is correct? Or should we stop saying one side is right and one side is wrong, one side is good and one side is evil, and maybe start noticing that all systems are kind of flawed, and there are pros and cons to both a left and a right, both a conservative and a liberal, both a democracy and a republic? Shakespeare certainly doesn't answer any of our questions, which is something I've always loved about Shakespeare. But he does expose the power plays on all sides here, and leaves us wondering and asking questions. And I think that that's really important. It's important to ask questions, rather than just rush into one particular party and hold fast to their ideals without listening to the other side. One of my favorite books, The Vision of the Anointed by Thomas Sowell, explores this idea as well. How easy it is to become so ideologically fixated and to believe that only your perspective is true and good, and then become insulated from any sort of facts or evidence that's counter to your opinion. In this story, I wonder very much who cares about the people, and whether the tribunes or Coriolanus have better policy that will help the people more. Clearly, both of their approaches to the population are flawed. So let's look at the actual story and make more comment as we go along. Act 1, Scene 1 opens with rebellion. All of the plebeians have risen because they're hungry. They feel like the elite are holding on to all the food and all the resources, and they want them to open up the grain. They're also angry at Caius Marcius, who has not yet been named Coriolanus, because he's very abrasive and clearly doesn't like them. The elderly patrician Menenius comes out, though, and talks them down. He tells them a story about how the state is actually a body and all the parts have to work together. And the elites, yeah, we're kind of like the belly. We have to digest the grain for you, but then we send it out through the blood to all the parts of the system. And he's just starting to calm them down when Caius Marcius comes in and is cursing them. And he's so angry at them because he sees them as useless. Here they are demanding food. Well, why don't they work a little bit harder? Then maybe they wouldn't be so hungry. They're just lazy, he thinks. And he can't stand them. He repeatedly says, hang them! And he also brings the news that because of the people's rebellion, they have been given a voice. Now these tribunes will speak on their behalf. And Marcius just is incredibly irritated at that. He feels like these people don't deserve a voice because all they do is complain. He's disgusted that they led an insurrection and wound up getting more political power. However, the scene ends with the news that the Volscians have come and are going to fight against the Romans, and that gets Marcius in a good mood because there's nothing he likes better than going to war, leading the armies against his favorite enemy, the Volscians. Particularly because there is a leader, a general over on their side called Aufidius. And Caius Marcius loves to fight against Aufidius. It's his greatest ambition to just face off with a man one-on-one. Speaking of Aufidius, we cut briefly to him and see how he's preparing to go to war, and so here's the man that Marcius really, really wants to fight. Back in Rome, scene 3, we meet Marcius's mother, Volumnia, and his wife, Virgilia. And Volumnia is very excited for her son to go back to war because she loves seeing him as a hero. She has constantly inspired that ambition in him when he was a child, and now he's grown up to be super tough and just this great war leader. Virgilia is much more hesitant. She's afraid for her husband as he goes to battle. She's concerned as he heads off out into the world. But Volumnia comforts her. And so the Roman army heads off to Coriolis to fight against the Volscians. But before they can attack the city, out come the Volscian army and face off with them. And there's this big fight scene back and forth in front of the gates, and it looks like the Romans are being beaten, and the Volscians are chasing after them, but Marcius, in his intense desire to win, charges forward and single-handedly enters the gates of the city. All the contagion of the south light on you, you shames of Rome. You heard of boils and plagues plaster you over, that you may be abhorred farther than seen, and one infect another against the wind a mile. You souls of geese that bear the shapes of men, how have you run from slaves that ape would beat? He just curses his army up and down for being cowards, and then single-handedly he runs into the city. When all of a sudden he peers up at the top of the wall, just covered in blood, and he beckons them in, and they all charge into the city as well. So then Marcius leaves the city in the hands of Lartius, and he rushes out to help another general whose name is Cominius. After all, he wants to find Aufidius and face off with him. And so when he finds Cominius, Cominius is about to retire for the day, about to take a break, and he inspires him to charge back into battle. And although the city is secure, then Lartius comes out to help them with the fight in the field. And finally, in the climax of the fight, Marcius sees Aufidius across the battlefield, and the two of them run at each other, and they're fighting each other, and oh man, it's finally the climax they've always wanted. But unfortunately for Marcius, the moment is spoiled because some of the Volscians come in and interrupt the fight and manage to take Aufidius off, and so Marcius doesn't get to beat him. But the battle is won, the Romans have been victorious, and the true hero this day is clearly Marcius. Not only did he single-handedly run in and take the city, but he also rallied basically every part of the army and pulled them all together and beat back the enemy. Without him, every single part of the army would have quit long ago. They definitely wouldn't have been able to enter the city. This would have been a rout. And so because of his heroism here against the town of Coriolis, he is named Coriolanus. That is his new name, to honor his military prowess and his heroism. There's two key points in this moment of victory for Coriolanus that I want to point out. Number one, Coriolanus does not take praise well. He has this sort of false modesty that kind of comes off as pride. And his pride-modesty dichotomy throughout this play is very important. He's incredibly headstrong, he doesn't care about the opinions of others, but if anybody praises him to his face, he gets very upset about it. It's very hard for him to take praise. The second incredibly telling moment in this scene is that Coriolanus decides to do something nice for one of the peasants. He recognizes that there was a poor man in Coriolis who helped him when he was alone in the city. And he says, "I sometime lay here in Coriolis at a poor man's house. He used me kindly. He cried to me. I saw him prisoner. But then Aufidius was within my view, and wrath o'erwhelmed my pity. I request you to give my poor host freedom." And so he asked for freedom for this citizen of Coriolis because of the kindness of the man. Aw, he's thinking of the little people. And Cominius is like, "That's a great thing. Yes, of course we'll give him pardon. Tell me, what is his name?" And Coriolanus goes, "Oh, whoops, I didn't catch his name." And as he himself admits, his own ambition to fight against Aufidius is what drove him away from helping the man in the first place. So Coriolanus clearly has an issue caring about the poor and about the people. He lacks compassion for the common people. And that's a serious fault. In scene 10, the final scene of this act, Aufidius is cursing the fact that he had Marcius in his sights and he didn't beat him. "Oh, that Marcius, I always want to fight against him, and I never ever am able to beat him. My nemesis." Act 2 begins with Marcius, now Coriolanus, return to Rome and the glory that he's going to receive there. Of course, everybody's waiting, trying to find out what's happened. Oh my, how has the war gone? Is everything okay? And Menenius is very concerned about Marcius, but of course Brutus and Sicinius, who are the two tribunes standing for the people, don't like him. And in the conversation between Menenius and the two tribunes, we see that tension between, the old patrician class, upper class elite of Menenius, and he just kind of likes his comforts. But then we have the two kind of snake-like and manipulative tribunes who are grasping at power from the bottom. In comes Coriolanus' family, and then they all hear the news together, and in comes Coriolanus with all kinds of fanfare. It's pomp and circumstance. It's a huge ordeal. And Coriolanus, of course, greets his family, and it's all nice, happy reunion. Coriolanus does not like to be openly praised, as we already mentioned, but now there is some talk of him being elected consul. Because of his heroism, because of what he's done for the state, now he's going to be given this position. And so everyone heads off to the capital. But after they leave, Brutus and Sicinius begin to talk. And Brutus says, very notably, then our office may, during his power, go sleep. We're gonna lose power if he's in charge. We better stir up the people against him. Brutus at one point says, so it must fall out to him. We better get him, or our authorities for an end. We must suggest the people in what hatred he still hath held them, that to's power he would have them made mules, silence their pleaders, and disproportion their freedoms, holding them in human action and capacity of no more soul nor fitness for the world than camels in their war, who have their provand only for bearing burdens and sore blows for seeking under them. So we don't want to lose power, so we're going to make his election seem like some horrible crisis to the people. Now the people are actually enjoying the ceremony. The people were happy to celebrate Coriolanus because he's a war hero. He just got back from saving their state. They're all kind of enamored with him at the moment. And so these tribunes are going to stir up and make them think of, if he's elected, it'll be the worst possible crisis. We gotta stop him. In scene 2, we are in the Senate, and they are moving to select Coriolanus as the next consul. And Cominius stands up to praise Coriolanus, and he rather obnoxiously feels like he has to leave the room because he doesn't want to hear his own praise. As they're discussing him, some of the officers say something pretty significant about Coriolanus as a leader. One says, therefore, for Coriolanus neither to care whether they love or hate him, that's the people, manifests the true knowledge he has in their disposition, and out of his noble carelessness lets them plainly see it. So the people see that he does not care about their opinion of him, and that bothers them. Is that a good or a bad thing, not to be swayed by public opinion? For Coriolanus, he is what he is. He's not the politician's politician. And when the tribunes challenge him on his lack of love for the people, he says, I love them as they weigh. I love them according to their worth. When they show themselves worthy, sure, I'll admire them. But as long as they continue to be cowards and lazy, I don't care. I'll like them when they impress me. And so Coriolanus is selected anyway by the Senate to be the next consul. However, before he can be the next consul, he has to go through certain hoops. Notably, he has to stand before the public and show the scars that he got in war, helping them out, and ask for their voice. He needs the people's voice in order to be consul. He does not want to do that because he doesn't like the people very much. He doesn't think they deserve for him to bow himself down in front of them. And also that whole false modesty thing going on, it grates at him to say, oh, look what I did for you. It really rubs him the wrong way. He wants to just do his thing and be done with it. But to go in front of people and say, look how much I deserve your voice, so please give me your voice. That rubs against the grain on him. He says, as if I had received them, my scars, for hire of their breaths only. As if I got scars just out of, desire for the people to speak up for me. That's not why I have these scars. I have these scars because I was doing my job. Not because I was trying to win over some political opinions. But them's the rules. And so Coriolanus goes into the public marketplace like he's supposed to. He gets, talked into it. But when the people come up and ask to see his scars, he says, hey, go ahead and give me your voice. I'm not going to show you my scars. And he kind of mocks them a little bit. As they exit, he says, custom calls me to it. What custom wills in all things should we do it? The dust on antique time would lie unswept, and mountainous error be too highly heaped for truth to o'erpeer. Rather than fool it so, let the high office and the honor go to one who would do thus. I hate doing things just because you're supposed to do them. Just jumping through these kind of hoops. And so as soon as his time is done, he's like, I'm done, I'm out of here, let me go get my new consul position. And the people decide that they're going to speak on his behalf, even though they're a little bit disappointed at him not being more open with them. At this point, Brutus and Sicinius come in, and they decide to stir the people up and turn the people's voices against him. Did you perceive he did solicit you in free contempt when he need your loves? And do you think that his contempt shall not be bruising to you when he hath power to crush? So if he was this rude to you when he needs you, just imagine how awful he'll be when he doesn't need you anymore. And then Sicinius and Brutus talk the people into pulling back their opinion and changing their vote, changing their voice. And they tell them to do it not because we told you to, but pretend like we told you to vote for him and then you decided not to. Very slippery. End of Act 2. Act 3 begins with Coriolanus getting ready to become consul when all of a sudden the tribunes come up and say, oh, the people changed their mind, they don't want you consul anymore. And Coriolanus is, of course, very angry at this. Because he knows who's responsible. It's not the people, they're just kind of wishy-washy, it's these tribunes. He says, you being their mouths, why rule you not their teeth? Have you not set them on? It is a purposed thing and grows by plot to curb the will of the nobility. Suffer it and live with such as cannot rule, nor ever will be ruled. If you just keep giving more and more power to these people, they're just going to make things worse and worse and worse. And Brutus and Sicinius keep poking him. They know that if they get him angry, then he'll make a mistake. And he gets more and more angry, and he starts shouting about the people, how, do the people deserve free corn for not working? They were, drafted into the wars, and yet they didn't even fight. They all turned tail and ran. And he gets more and more worked up to the point that he finally says, you two are the problem, you tribunes. Your dishonor mangles true judgment and bereaves the state of that integrity which should become it, not having the power to do the good it would for the ill which doth control it. Your ill that controls the state makes everything worse. It's time to pluck you two out here. And because he suggests that the state would be better off without the tribunes, without the voice of the people, we'd actually get something done then. The tribunes then say, oh, look, he's committed treason. This is an insurrection. He's rebelling against the voice of the people. Look how he's trying to overthrow us. He needs to be arrested for treason. And they try to arrest him, which is going to go really badly. I mean, arrest the man who single-handedly, brought down a whole town? That's kind of, But the other patricians and politicians are like, let's try to have peace here, let's try to have peace here. Let's all go into the marketplace, and yes, we'll let Coriolanus be tried by the tribunes, because we want peace. Let's have a fair trial here. So Cominius takes Coriolanus off to try to calm him down, get him ready. We'll talk through this. Let's do this diplomatically. And as soon as he leaves the stage, Menenius is like, "Oh, we're toast." Menenius says, "His heart's his mouth. What his breast forges, that his tongue must vent." Coriolanus cannot hold his tongue. He has to say what he feels. So there's no way he can be political and flattering and soft-spoken. It just doesn't work. And Menenius then tries to talk down Sicinius and Brutus, saying, "Hey, you guys don't want to destroy Coriolanus. You don't want to make him an enemy. This is not a good idea. Let's just try to, work out his faults and try to make things better, okay?" Scene 2, back at home, Volumnia, Coriolanus' mother, is trying to get him in the right frame of mind for this trial. What you have to do is you have to act like you like the people. Coriolanus is like, "I can't do that. No, can't do that, can't do that. Why did you wish me milder? Would you have me false to my nature? Rather say I play the man I am." And Menenius comes in and he's trying to talk him down too. But they finally convince him to answer mildly, okay? Mildly. Be mild, okay? Coriolanus says, "The word is mildly. Pray you let us go. Let them accuse me by invention. I will answer in mine honor." And Menenius goes, "Aye, but mildly." And Coriolanus goes, "Well, mildly be it then. Mildly." We'll see how that goes. He arrives in the marketplace, and the tribunes immediately call him a traitor. They say all kinds of awful things about him because, "Oh, he wanted to overthrow us. He's against the people. He's fighting against Rome." And of course, Coriolanus, as soon as he's challenged, begins to just blast off at the mouth. And Menenius is like, "Gently, gently, gently." But he can't. He just has to say how he feels. Especially when they all decide to give the death penalty to him. And he's ready to basically turn and kill them all when all of a sudden they tone it down to just exile. They're going to exile him now. Now, you can see the political suicide in this moment. Coriolanus goes from hero of Rome to let's kill him and get rid of him in 2 seconds. Just because he can't hold his tongue. But there's so much political manipulation in the background here. When he's told he's going to be banished, he turns around and says, "You common cry of curs, whose breath I hate, as reek of the rotten fens, whose loves I prize as the dead carcass of unburied men, that do corrupt the air, I banish you." And that sounds kind of childish. They said, "We banish you," and he turns around and says, "You scum, I banish you instead." But there is a rather significant moment there. Coriolanus is the protector of Rome. And so he's being banished, but in so doing, he is turning on Rome, and he is leading to all of their destruction. Without him, what's going to happen next time an army is marching on Rome? And Sicinius and Brutus feel really good as they watch him walk away. Act 4, Scene 1, Coriolanus says goodbye to his family, and he is in a state. In Scene 2, Brutus and Sicinius feel really good. They got rid of their political rival. Man, they've got the power now. And they run into his family and they try to avoid looking Volumnia in the eye because she's pretty ticked at them. But Volumnia and even Menenius are quick to call them out for their abuse of their position. Meanwhile, how's the political world going outside of Rome? Well, we hear a conversation between a couple of spies who let us know that now that Rome has kicked out its greatest hero, the Volscians are gonna take advantage of this sooner rather than later. Meanwhile, what is Coriolanus doing? Well, he has gone into Antium to find his greatest nemesis, his rival Aufidius. Because since his own country betrayed him and kicked him out, it's time to team up, dream team, with Aufidius. So Coriolanus basically sneaks into Aufidius' house. He's treating the servants a little bit roughly, kind of being rude to them, and so they try to call him out, and he says, "No, I want to see your master." And so he goes before Aufidius, and he reveals himself and he says, "Rome hates me. I'm ready to side with you. I'm ready to pay them back. I will put you in a position of so much power, I will take you to the gates of Rome and inside." And Aufidius is really happy to hear it, and so they embrace, and now they're BFFs. Back to Rome, the tribunes are still enjoying themselves and still living it up, saying, "Ha ha, man, everything's awesome now that Coriolanus is gone." But all of a sudden, in comes word that the Volscians are marching against them. Oh no, we don't have a hero to fight them anymore. And then worse news, it's not just Aufidius coming, no. Marcius, Coriolanus, is now on their team too, and both of them are coming to take us out. We're toast. And Menenius is there to say, nice, good job, tribunes, we're dead. And all the people are like, you know what? I didn't want to banish Coriolanus actually at all. I didn't vote for that. It was those stupid tribunals. And so the people turn on the tribunes. Back in the Volscian army, Coriolanus is getting lots and lots of praise. So much so that Aufidius is beginning to get jealous. And he's getting kind of irritated at how much attention Coriolanus is getting. And he begins to think, I don't know if I want to keep this friendship up. I think I might have to turn on him again. Act 5. In Rome, things look bad. The army has come up to Rome, and they're parked outside, and it looks like Rome is toast. Cominius has already gone to try to plead for Rome to Coriolanus, and Coriolanus would not hear him. And so the tribunes are begging Menenius, who is like a father to Coriolanus, to go out there, please, try to talk him down. And Menenius is like, no, we deserve this. We deserve this for what we did to him. But he finally agrees to go. Menenius goes out to the camp, and he presents himself, and the watch refuses to let him enter, and they treat him rather coldly. And finally, when Coriolanus does happen to be walking by and he sees him, he doesn't greet him as an old friend or as a father figure, but just dismisses him and makes him go away. And Rome is doomed. But finally, in scene 3, Volumnia and Virgilia, and Virgilia's son Marcius, Coriolanus' son, come before Coriolanus to try to plead for Rome. It's his own mother, his own wife. And everybody seems to be very impressed with the way Coriolanus hasn't listened to anybody yet. But here comes his mom and his wife, and they kneel before him. And he tells them up front that he's not going to listen to them, but when they insist on being heard, he says, I will sit here with the rest of my Volscian friends, and so that they can publicly see that I'm not going to listen. And so Volumnia, his mother, then pleads for him to not fight against his own country. And there's this strange tension and moment. Coriolanus capitulates. But why he capitulates is not entirely clear. It doesn't seem as though he realizes that he's been committing treason against his country. After all, he feels like they're the ones who did injustice to him, and he banished them. It might be because his respect for his mother is so important to who he is. All along, she was the one who made him tough. She was the one who made him who he is, and now she's asking him to not be who he is, and to let go of all that he believes is right and just. And so in that moment, by letting his mother win, he's giving himself up. And therein lies the tragedy. He has to sacrifice himself as a son to his mother, or he has to sacrifice his sense of justice and duty. In the end, he gives in to his mother. Oh, mother, mother, what have you done? Behold, the heavens do ope, the gods look down, and this unnatural scene they laugh at. Oh, my mother, mother, oh, you have won a happy victory to Rome, but for your son, believe it, oh, believe it. Most dangerously you have with him prevailed, if not most mortal to him, but let it come. He recognizes that this is his doom, to give up himself for his mother. And yeah, Rome wins, but does Rome deserve to win in this moment? And he turns to Aufidius and says, I'm sorry, Aufidius, I can't do it. Wouldn't you have given in to your mother too? And Aufidius goes, oh yeah, I was moved too, yeah. Back in Rome, Menenius is feeling hopeless. He knows there's no way that Volumnia will win. But then they come back and, oh, the news, it's wonderful. Coriolanus has turned. He's not going to fight against Rome anymore. We scared the tribunes to death, but I guess they're not dead. One of them kind of got beat up by the people. And so we have the heroic welcome of Volumnia as she comes in, which sort of mirrors, but in a tragic way, the heroic welcome that Coriolanus had when he entered into Rome. Meanwhile, Coriolanus goes back with Aufidius and the army to Coriolus, where he presents his campaign as a victory. After all, I took them all the way up to the doors of Rome, conquered all of that for you. And as they stand there presenting themselves, Aufidius turns on him and with a group of conspirators stab Coriolanus to death. His anger and his rivalry with this man all along have built up to this moment. He cannot let Coriolanus walk away from this after everything. And all the lords are kind of shocked at this moment of violence right in front of them, but Aufidius says, you know, I'll face the music now. My rage is gone and I am struck with sorrow. Take him up. Help three of the chiefest soldiers, I'll be one. Beat thou the drum that speaketh mournfully. Trail your steel pikes. Though in this city he hath widowed and unchilded many a one, which to this hour bewail the injury, yet he shall have a noble memory. And so Aufidius satisfies his hatred against Coriolanus. What a complex play. What does Rome deserve? What do the people truly need? What does leadership really look like? I'm not sure I know after this play, but isn't that the way? Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or to watch another video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.